Hey family, Dr. Dorsey here, and welcome to Next Level Conversations, where we don't just talk about growth, we ignite it. Every time we get together, we dive into transformative insights, breakthrough strategies, and high impact wisdom designed to elevate your mindset, sharpen your leadership, improve your fitness and wellness, and of course, fuel your success. So whether you're here to level up in business, relationships, get more fit, get well, heal, personal mastery, or anything that you're focusing on, you're in the right place. Here is my promise to you. Promise to maximize your time. Promise to encourage you to take action. Promise you to focus on growth, and I promise you to be in the moment. I need you to make the same promise to yourself. We are here to help you get to the next level. So let's get into it. Hey family, welcome to another episode of Next Level Conversations. And I am fortunate enough to have somebody who is brilliant, somebody who is well-trained, somebody who I continue to admire. As you know, we focus on empowering and inspiring men. We share stories and we unlock potential. And we really do believe that this is the men's premier growth podcast. But if you are watching today, I need you to get your pens. I need you to put on your listening ears, and I need you to be really attentive. We are about to drop some significant jewels. This brother has moved through walls of academia and climbed hills theologically, and certainly a pillar of faith, even at his age and at his status. He serves as a tremendous minister and voice of influence. But we just got him on here to kind of talk about some of the things that we oftentimes deal with as brothers. And I know that that'll be beneficial to everybody who was watching. I need y'all to do me a huge, huge favor. Shout him out in the comments. Help me welcome the one and only Eric Thomas. What's up, brother? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's up, my brother? How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing okay. Would you do me a favor and just say what's up to the folks who are watching?
What's up, everybody? I'm Eric J. Thomas, and I'm so glad to be here today. Grateful for my friend and my brother, Dr. Dorsey. You know, I think we're going to have an amazing conversation. And again, I'm just excited to be here. So I'm going to encourage you to, of course, like, share, comment, share it with all your folks. Let them know that this is going on right now, and you could be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, man. Give people an update. They don't know you. They never met you. Some of my audience is like, yo, what are you up to, man? What are you focusing on? What you got your hands in at the moment?
Man, I think the most simple thing about me is that I'm a friend, I'm a brother, I'm an advocate, and I am a person that's living life like everybody else. My specialty is mental health. I am a psychotherapist. I specialize in Black men of all ages who deal with severe mental health disorders. That's my specialty. That's my thing. That's my jam, whatever you want to say. And I got into that after almost a decade-long career in education, working as, both a teacher and a school administrator, a school leader, turning underperforming schools into top tier 1 performing schools in Black and brown neighborhoods. That is my specialty. My commitment has always been to our people. It has always been to Black people. And I've done that between, Michigan and the DMV and all that other stuff. So other than that, man, I've got some irons in the fire that I'm not ready to announce yet. Working on a couple of different things. But right now, man, seeing my clients, working with Black men, doing some programming at the church, and, just living my best life.
Man, salute to you, man. That educator journey is one that isn't touted enough, right? The amount of generations that are touched by your service and your journey, both before and during and even after, man, that's laudable. And I think it's dope that you had found and do find passion there. I'm really interested in sort of a lot that you've learned from that and what has kind of stuck with you as you've come through that. Is there any like signature lesson or something that you discovered that you have really been influenced by that you'll keep with you for the duration of your life or career?
Man, education is the reason why I got into mental health. Education showed me how many disparities exist within systems, and it showed me how much support our Black and brown children do not have available for them. That's not for me coming against the educational system, but it simply allowed me to realize that when a child goes to school, a lot of times that's the most peaceful place that they'll be for that day. It's the
Wow.
most structured place. It's the place where they'll probably get their only meals for that day. And it's probably the place where they'll only experience an environment of adults who probably support and care for them a great deal. And I realized when some of my students were dealing with mental health issues, it's specifically because, their parents were dealing with that as well. And there is no resources available to them for that. And your school social worker, your school psychologist, your school counselor can only do so much, especially if you're in schools with, 400, 600, 1,000 kids, and I've worked at schools really with a minimum of 600 students. So I've never known really a small school environment. And, those people are stretched thin. And a lot of times, support is directed, according to, who the system will deem needs it most. So I got into mental health simply because I said I want to be a greater support, and I want to be more equipped for both my students as well as just people I encounter in general. I'm grateful because I've been able to create long lasting relationships. One of my mentees, he actually is now a student at my alma mater, finishing his sophomore year, at Howard University. So I'm grateful for that. But education has not been a walk in the park. It hasn't been a bunch of roses because just as many students as I've helped, I feel like for the almost 10 years that I was in education, I lost a student for every year that I was there. I've lost students to cancer. I've lost students to gun violence. I've lost students, to just senseless crime. And then I even have some students who unfortunately, are now serving lifelong sentences for crimes and things of that nature. So working in education made me realize that it really does take a village to raise a child, that we need communities, strong communities of support and leadership, especially for our boys, especially for our young men. And that's why I knew that would be my specialty when going into mental health, working with Black men, again, of all ages, typically who deal with severe mental health disorders.
Yeah, I think that's important. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you for that context. I want to get to the students, but before that, I want to deal with some realities that spring up when you're talking. As a practitioner, you are exposed to a significant amount of just emotional, psychological, even spiritual stuff. By that, I mean, you as a practitioner are oftentimes put in a situation where you are so attentive to the needs of others that hidden underneath that, nobody really asks about your own needs. I'm really interested in what you have done to be sure that you care for yourself when you talk about experiencing loss, when you talk about the children that you've lost along the way. And I'm really intending to have you reflect and talk about what you do to create space for men who have found mission and who have found purpose, but really don't do the best job at caring for themselves. Can you speak about that, please?
Yeah, sure. I think, one of the things that people ask me oftentimes is, how do you listen to, the things that people share with you in therapy and you don't hold on to that? Um, I think you have to realize whether or not you're built for the profession. I don't internalize things. That's just never been who I am. And I am a person who can listen, chew the meat and spit out the bones. And I have to realize that my job is to help, not take on anybody else's weight, because we all have our own weight in life. So I will allow things to, go in my ear. I'll take my notes and create the treatment plan and do everything that I'm supposed to do as a practitioner. And then I let it go. Now, there are some things where for sure I'm just like, wow, like that really actually that might have stuck with me for a while. But this is why self-care is important. This is why I believe diet and exercise is important. So I make sure I monitor my diet because we know that our food affects our mood. This is why I make sure that I go to the gym or I work out in whatever way that I can, because keeping in charge of our physical health, of course, contributes to our mental health. It helps contribute to our self-esteem. If you feel like you look good, you're gonna feel good. Those types of things. So I make sure that I create enough time, for myself to work out, to exercise, to eat right, to spend time with friends and family, to allow myself moments. And opportunities to just have nothing to do. I think it's easy to where we feel like we always got to have something to do. We always got to have something going on. And it's okay to take a moment and do nothing. And I think that that's something that people oftentimes don't realize. I think it's okay to treat yourself, whether that's your favorite meal, whether that's you buy yourself something nice, whether that's you go somewhere you always wanted to go. So I think when it comes down to self care requires just as much intention as it does to care for other people. So whoever you are, whatever you're doing, you have to make sure that you're pouring into yourself. I make sure that, of course, I get the spiritual feeding that I need, because I am a person of faith. I listen to sermons, I listen to podcasts, I will read books and things of that nature, something that will feed my mind and my spirit. So all of those things I think come together to help me make sure that I'm pouring into myself. I'm getting the best level of self-care that I can give for myself. And I also allow others to make space for me and to be kind, to me and maybe do things for me. I'm grateful for great friends, great family. And I think when you have a good community behind you, that also makes life easier to tackle.
I hope you guys got that. We talked about fitness, talked about friends, talked about who you fellowship with, talked about being intentional. We talked about being a vessel that has an entryway and an exit point. Um, he talked about how he can separate his professional expertise and his responsibility to his clients from like his own individual walk of both faith and responsibility to himself. I think those are huge, brothers, and you got to hear that. And those are bars. The mood impacts you, the food that impacts your mood, and how connected your diet and your wellness plan is to your lived experience, right? Those are bars, bro. I appreciate that. I want to, if I can, I want to sort of shine light on some of the behaviors, some of the decisions, some of the strategies that are not helpful, right? I'm a tag team this thing with you because you've highlighted some things that we should do. And sometimes things that we should do are the hardest things to do. But it may be easier for us to vividly see maybe what we shouldn't do. Because sometimes if you may not know what you should do, like it may be the list that you put together, it may take a brother some time to figure out which one is going to be his most healthy thing. Because the gym is a hard up climb for some people, food is a hard up climb for people. Sometimes, depending on how they logic their own priorities and values. But I wonder if there are some signature struggles that you're like, yo, bro, you can't afford to do this, or you should really be careful, or you should really pay attention if you're doing that. Does anything come to mind when I talk about maybe some really, really toxic, unhealthy ways that brothers are using to navigate life? Does anything come to mind, particularly in your experience in education and in serving clients?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is probably going to be, it's going to be a couple of things, but I think the biggest thing, or at least I'll say one and two, will probably be self isolation, where a lot of men feel as though while you're going through and while you're dealing with challenges and things of that nature, you have to withdraw yourself from, your friends and your family and your community because you're afraid of fear or judgment and all of those other things. But all of those things, they create loneliness and they amplify distress. And for Black men, a lot of times this is reinforced by cultural norms that discourage seeking help. So we feel like a lot of times because we are embarrassed and because we do deal with shame, we don't want folks to know that we are dealing with some challenges, that we do have some things going on. And we really would do better to be around people, but we feel like it's easier to be, to isolate ourselves. And I can understand that because you don't want people to speak negatively, while you're going through what you're going through. You don't want people to act like they have all the answers in the world all of a sudden, and you know things are. I can understand why, but isolating oneself does not do. It does more harm for your mental health than it does good. Another thing is emotional avoidance. A lot of men deal with emotional avoidance, and you know when we have that whole that mentality that says you need to man up, that discourages emotional expression. It reinforces the idea that vulnerability is weakness, but in fact vulnerability is your greatest strength. It is the fact that you can say to someone, hey, I am dealing with this, or I'm challenged in this particular area. I believe I might need a little bit of help. But when we bottle up our emotions, when we hold those things on the inside of us, all it does is increase our anxiety. It leads to depression, and eventually we wind up having an emotional breakdown. Whether you lash out, or as this generation might say, you know, you crash out over something. You know, you have a difficulty with self-regulating, mood regulation. Another thing that typically happens is you have an over reliance on substances, uses of alcohol, marijuana, or other drugs that you know people use to cope, to temporarily relieve the pain and the pressure that you're going to. But what that does is that worsens your long-term emotional regulation and functioning. Substances are used a lot of times to numb pain, but it really delays us in addressing the root causes of our issues. And so it creates a codependence within a person, a lot of times attacking your health. And then now we're dealing with some comorbidity. When I say comorbidity, that means that you have multiple things now going on with your health or your mental health at the same time. So if I'm relying on substances and things of that nature, and let's say I'm destroying my kidney or my liver, and now the doctor is finding physical issues with the functioning of my kidney and my liver, but I'm also diagnosed as being depressed, that's called comorbidity. And we see one is created to create is with another one. That's why we always tell people, don't allow yourself to become bitter, because bitterness allows yourself to become physically sick. And again, it's that comorbidity that now is happening. And so now your mental health is not only taxed because you're bitter for whatever reason made you bitter. Now you're furthermore upset because your physical health is declining. And so we keep on having these spirals that line up with one another that a lot of people really need to realize. So it's great for men to talk to somebody. It's great for men to get their community. It's great for men not to isolate themselves. It's great for men not to do that emotional avoidance that we do a lot of times. And again, if you can just find your safe space, find your people, whoever they are, you know, stop bonding over frivolous things. Yeah, we all like to play ball. I get that. But what can we really bond over that shows, hey, I got your back, you got my back? And when you really allow yourself to build that community, you have a place where you can express that vulnerability, and you can say, hey, this is what I'm challenged with right now. And I may not necessarily be looking for you to have an answer, or you know even to have advice, but at least provide me a space where I can express myself.
Yo, this is a master class, okay, on what to do and what not to do, bro. That was really thorough. And I'm impacted by that as well. And I know there are a lot of men who are watching who are like, yo, that's me. And I'm stuck in that spiral. I want to, can we stay there for just a little bit? I mean, I'm clear that part of what you are contributing, we have to really move slow through this neighborhood, right? Because I always think it's unfair. Not that we have the time to really go into depth to help people to understand and be more self-aware the way that they deserve. But sometimes I think it's unfair to kind of show people a picture and then move the picture so fast that people can't really grab on to what you're saying and what you're doing. But I'm so deeply moved. That comorbidity piece feels like, wow, there are two, as I'm sure you've experienced, sometimes you meet people when there are three or four or five things, right? Which sort of takes the comorbidity and makes it, I don't know what it does to the front end of that particular multiple morbidity. I don't really know how to say it, and I don't know the clinical term for it. Um, I want you, if you can, please, as briefly as succinct as you can, because I got places I want to move through here, you know, to just talk to the person who's dealing with comorbidity, just real quick. Like if you, Like if I'm in front of you, you have then discerned that there's something that I'm dealing with. Like, just talk to me. You got 90 seconds to say something to me that you feel I need to hear at this moment. What do you say?
I want to say to you that number one, you're on a step to the right path. The fact that you are listening to or seeking or even open to any kind of help speaks volumes to who you are and your character, and most of all, the strength that you have. The fact that you can recognize that there's an issue and you want to solve it shows that you are much more of a strong person than you've realized. And I want you to own that, and I want you to rest in that and realize that this journey of healing that you're taking is really one step at a time. It's one step at a time, one day at a time, and it's one yes at a time. And I break it down like that because there are going to be some days where you want to say no, but you'll still take you'll still take the step. There are going to be some days where you don't want to move at all, but you'll still say yes. It's literally a journey, and it's not always going to be completely moving forward and never looking back. There are going to be some times where you want to look back, but just because you look back doesn't mean that you have to go back. All I need you to do is to make sure you put yourself first, allow yourself to make whatever necessary steps and changes you need to, and go and move forward. Understand that it will not be without challenge. It will not be without challenge, but you have enough strength and knowledge and wisdom on the inside of you to continue to make it happen. So yeah, you took 5 steps and then you had one bad day. That doesn't erase the 5 steps that you took. Now you got to continue to take step number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And as long as you continue to do that, you will be okay. Don't allow yourself to beat yourself up over the past. The past is the past. It has already happened. But now that you're here, whatever you've been diagnosed with, whatever you're dealing with, whatever the doctor or the mental health practitioner has said about you, understand that these things can be fixed, they can be healed, they can be changed. Follow the advice, do what you're supposed to do, and just know that better is on the other side. You just have to continue to take the step. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to tell yourself, I'm going to continue to take the step and move forward.
It's gone. Let that rest there for a minute. Uh, that's strong, bro.
Thank
And that's needed. And uh, I'm reminded of moments. I know you have these too. You ever sit in a place of uh, communication, teaching, church service session, and the speaker says something and hits you, and you're like, you you could just break down in tears, but it kind of hits you. Kind of got to wrestle with it first. I feel like we gifted brothers that moment, and sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and own that. You know, uh, I feel like some brothers, myself included, I just want to honor the space that you've illuminated with that word to them. I have so much to say about this because I want to. Can we at a later time? I'd love to have a conversation with you about grief.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
this brings up. I think when I'm talking about grief, and brothers hear me, because most of the time when I say grief, people are thinking you lost someone, but I'm speaking to the grief that comes along with missed opportunities, uh, the death of dreams, uh, the grief that comes along with the part of yourself that you feel like you lose when someone rejects you, when someone does not listen to you. I feel like there's grief wrapped in that. Uh, the grief that's connected to the the feelings that you reserve
Mhm.
about your own performance. Like, bro, that's grief, right? When you feel like you should have done better. Uh, the other pieces of grief, these are just things I'm just sort of saying out loud for us to come back to. The grief that walks with people who no longer speak to their children, who suffered divorce or suffered separation, and the grief of loss of parent, you know, loss of income. These are all grief things, and I think that men don't get to say. I'm still grieving.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like we don't get to come into a space to say the way that I'm showing up is connected to the fact that I'm still along the grief spectrum and I'm navigating the volatility of that. So I want to come back to that. Please, if we
Absolutely.
can do this at a later time, because I think there's so much grief that we deal with, bro. And the thing that you introduced at the front, we sometimes don't use language like mental health, emotional health to describe what we're fighting for. We we use other language, and this is where I want to turn the conversation to maybe something that I know you and I are going to have a lot of fun talking about, but where our elders might get upset.
Uh-oh.
Well, I think it's important. I think it's necessary. I sat with a very uh, well-known person, scholar and theologian, and sat across the table from him. And I told him this. You get in these small circles, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm upset with you." I said, "Because you, as my elder, a successful man, person who is known across the globe for your contribution to theological, social, economic, community conversations, particularly as it relates to Black people, you told me as a Black man, you gave me this recipe. You told me to go to school. You told me to get an education. You told me to work hard. You told me to be faithful. You told me to stay in the same space. And the advice that you gave me is not working. Uh, So I want to carry this critique into the pulpit and into the church. Can we do that, please? Now, I recognize that you guys are not going to invite me to preach. That's fine. I recognize this is going to close some doors as it relates to getting up in places, but that's okay. We'll be all right. I want to have the conversation with some male elders, particularly the ones that, when I needed professional help, just told me to pray about it, particularly the ones who have been through periods of struggle and suffered and been up the road, but didn't tell me that they've been up those roads. They just wanted to illuminate the gospel for me. And I say that with all due respect to the gospel. Don't y'all come for me in the comments. But they wanted to illuminate the text and the theology such that they did not acknowledge, right? Or maybe they could not acknowledge, or they were not equipped to acknowledge at the time where they gave me the advice, but they came to knowledge later and still didn't fix it. Can we please just talk about the harm that sometimes occurs through good, well intended Christian theological influences? Am I
Yeah.
saying that right? I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but I want to speak to them because they still are communicating in a way that's harmful to men sometimes. And I want to talk about that. You may not even agree with me. You may not even agree that it's been harmful. I'd be surprised if you didn't. But some of that advice has not served me well as a Black man and has not served others as Black man. And in many ways, it has closed doors to even bring people to the introduction to the faith the way we are equipped to do. I know I've said a lot. What's coming up for you? Because this is just, it's not a sore spot, but it's something we don't talk about.
Man, I think you're definitely let me say this, you're definitely spot on, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. And what you're referring to is what a lot of us who have maybe grown up in church, or maybe we've been behind the scenes in church, have experienced, where we're dealing with something and the elders or the people we look up to tell us things such as just pray about it, those types of things, versus giving us a real, and I'm not saying prayer is not real, but it versus giving us a practical, let me say that, versus giving us a practical approach to how we can fix or find help or solve whatever it is that we're going through. And that's known as spiritual bypassing. That's what that's called. That's called spiritual bypassing. And so, spiritual bypassing, me as a therapist, as a person who works with people who are faith based and not faith based, I see all the time how scripture is misused. And me as a minister, I see all the time how scripture is misused in the life of people. And some people will tell people just pray about it. But I mean, the best way I can describe what I'm about to describe is even Jesus wept, even Jesus cried. Faith and therapy wholeheartedly can work together. They're not in competition with one another. And it's the same way that Everybody wants supernatural healing, right? But God works through the doctors. God can work through your medication, whether your medication is for your physical or for your mental. It's completely okay. And so when we say things like just pray about it, it encourages people or it makes people feel like they don't have to seek out support. But faith and therapy can go hand in hand the same way faith and your doctor can go hand in hand. And so when we encourage people to walk out their faith while seeking support, it really allows people to begin to heal without shame. And a lot of what people are doing in the church is they're trying to heal with shame. But shame doesn't heal anybody. Shame just drives people deeper into whatever it is that they're dealing with. And a lot of times we think that we can shame people in deliverance and we can shame people into healing and we can shame people into their breakthrough. But all we do is we just allow it to just suppress further and further and further and further. You can look at studies on a lot of countries. If you look at countries where people are the most oppressed, or even some states where people are the most oppressed, a lot of times the things that they are trying to prevent them from doing, they do on a greater and a deeper level. So, for example, if you're trying to prevent people from, let's say, drinking alcohol, because you think if we make alcohol illegal, it's going to stop alcoholism and people are going to, da 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 da. You actually are going to have the most people who deal with alcohol abuse in that society.
Come on.
If you try to make drugs illegal and hard to access or whatever the case may be, people are gonna, when they get their hands on it, they're not gonna know how to handle it. They're gonna overdo it, and that's why you're gonna have a bunch of overdoses. This has been several economic studies done on this. So when you look at countries where these things are legal, liberated, regulated, you have the least amount of overdoses, you have the least amount of people dealing with alcohol abuse, you have more people who have access to mental health, because they look at these things as, oh, that's just a part of life and I can get that if I ever want it, and therefore I don't need it. I don't need to binge on it. I don't need to try to overdo it and those types of things. Same goes with people who struggle with porn addiction, pornography addiction, things of that nature. Honestly, the amount of people who are addicted to porn is decreasing because porn is becoming so readily available. It's becoming scrolling content on social media. So when we do spiritual bypassing in church, again, we just encourage people to heal according to the level of their shame. But shame has never delivered anybody. It's only driven people deeper into the darkness of whatever it is that they're in. But it is God who has called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. And there are some things that you have to cast a light on in order for the darkness to flee. I've never taken a flashlight into a dark room and still not been able to see, So if you allow yourself to turn on the flashlight, if you create spaces where people can really shine a light on what they're dealing with, we can stop all that spiritual bypassing and realize that my Bible and my therapist are not in competition. They don't conflict with one another. My Bible and my doctor don't conflict with one another. I can pray away my belly fat all day long, but until I change my diet, that thing ain't going nowhere. I can pray away my schizophrenia. I can pray away my bipolar disorder. But until I really get some real coping strategies and mechanisms and maybe medication, because you may not even need medication.
Sure.
It will still be there. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times what we really don't want to talk about is sometimes our church culture actually increases our psychosis.
Say it.
It actually adds to our psychosis, and now we make our psychosis spiritual. But a lot of people don't like to talk about that. Some of the people we meet at the altar, some of the people who come to the altar, they need to talk to somebody. Everything ain't right up here. It ain't about laying hands and casting out devils. No, they need to go talk to somebody. And again, the way that God works, the way that I've experienced and the way that I know God's work, God works through people. That's why isolating ourselves again is not necessarily, the way to go. And God can work through my doctor. God can work through my therapist. God can also work through my pastor. And it's amazing if I have them all together, how really God can then.
Hey, stop. Listen to me, y'all. Listen. Dag on it. Bro, that's so powerful, man. let me, can I please, I gotta listen. This is like, it's not even drinking from a fire hydrant. This is like, this is like powerful stuff on overload. Do you understand? This is like so good. Uh, so I want to pause to give you guys an opportunity to be responsive to that, both in the comments and in your own thoughts. But I also want to speak to the leader, the spiritual leader, who may feel like we're coming for you. We're not. Uh, the most loving thing that I can do, particularly when people were well intentioned, is inform them that there's been harm that that has occurred, uh, that brothers are still suffering as a consequence of some of the ways that we are perpetuating this mentality, particularly onto us. You know, I think about particularly Black men. Uh, you know, I think about all of the other pressures that we're enduring. I think about, like, can you imagine? Of course you can. The thing that makes my heart so heavy is you're walking through a world into situations on the job and sometimes just microaggressive existence, and you're being mismanaged everywhere else. And then you come into a place that is supposed to care and supposed to wrap their arms and supposed to contribute, and you're being mismanaged there too with good intention, right?
Mhm.
And so now there is this perpetuated cycle of, well, I didn't intend to do it. So I want to talk to those people, both people of faith and both people of good means and good, you know, posture, and you're just trying to do something to help, who have helpfully harmed people. I want to say to you that when you know better, you got to be willing to do better. I want to say to the people who are in institutions who don't know how to repent publicly, can I just say that again for the people in the back? Right? You don't know how to repent publicly, which means I used to think this way and now I think this way, right? That we give our leaders permission to evolve in public, right? So that if a minister used to stand hard on a principle and was so dogmatic and was so forward and was so strict with a particular mentality, we have to give them permission to say, I now know better, so I can do better. And I am I am going to attempt to live that out before you. And where you, if you want to give grace to any space, give grace to that minister who has the courage to say, I thought I understood it.
Yeah.
I really thought I did. And I look, bro, can I just be honest? Let me just pause here and tell a story about how this hits me in such a significant way. I feel like you might understand this as somebody who appears to acknowledge this as one of your giftings. Now, uh, I remember when I first came to knowledge about the power of my ability to communicate. You understand? Because those of us who know how to talk, this is both a blessing and something to manage with responsibility. I remember when I came to the realization that sometimes I've used this gift to get anything I wanted. Pause the script right there. In the tenth of, I felt like I would just frivolously use the gift, and I felt like I had used it to guide certain people to lifestyles and decisions that I would be ashamed to tell now. The thing that I would convince people to do. You understand? And so when I had done that and I came to knowledge that, yo, I have to really be careful. I can't just, this skill, this ability, this talent has carries real implications. You understand? And so for me, I had to shift and I had to be willing to say, I'm no longer going to, or I'll be more strategic. I'll be more careful. I'll be intentional about how I'm using this particular gift. And I remember intentionally then trying to fit it within the framework of the church that I was at, and how that began to go well, and how I was really deliberate about knowing when I was using it and not using it, and how that process all happened internally. Like nobody knew it was happening, but I had to own the responsibility that once I understood that I had something significant and powerful, I had to manage it. It couldn't just continue to operate like I didn't know. And so that's why I feel so passionately about this. So I am saying to anyone who even in this podcast, you have discovered error. Okay. You've discovered harm. This is a great opportunity to start shifting. And
Mhm.
if you don't think that your reputation can sustain it, you weren't in it for the reputation to begin with, I hope, right? If you don't think that your career or the way that people look at you can survive, like anybody who witnesses you, my brother, transforming to a better version of yourself, and they can't get past the fact that you are acknowledging where you made a mistake and getting better, those are probably not people you need to have around at this moment. Am I saying that right?
You're absolutely saying it right.
So I want to speak to that person too, the accomplished, well-intended, harmful person. That's crazy. And so I've been wanting to say that to elders, particularly the ones they say, I'm stuck in my ways. I'm sorry. I've gotten long with it, but man, I just feel like uh, that needed to be said, and that's what came up when you were talking about what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Boy,
you said a lot of great things, and forgive me, I don't mean to interject, but I just want to add
please.
this. You know, you don't know what you don't know,
Mhm.
and you know what you do know, right? And so for the longest, I think one thing that helped me get over some of my and I'll just call it what it is. Like one thing that helped me get over some of my church hurt, right,
Mhm.
is realizing that different time, different era, different generation, different levels of accessibility. You know the amount of harmful theology that was instilled in me as a kid that I had to unlearn. And it was so funny because then I heard it said from one of my mentors, and I'm so grateful. It says the greatest ability that anybody can have is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Hold on. Say it again. Hold on. Shoot.
The greatest ability that an individual can have is the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that was one of the greatest lessons that hit me in my life because I had to unlearn so much harmful theology or other toxic ways of thinking and things attributed to culture. And I had to literally allow myself to be re educated in order for me to wind up finally becoming my best self and my most knowledgeable self and my most well-intended self. It was literally that I had to detox from some old thinking and mindsets and ideologies that I didn't know were harmful because you don't know what you don't know, right? In order to really tap into my true potential. And had I never unlearned some things, I probably never would have gotten mental health. I grew up in a church that didn't believe in mental health. They didn't believe in it, So I grew up in a church that believed in the oppression of women, so many different things. And I don't and the thing about it is I don't fault them
Correct.
because
Correct.
again, they do
Correct.
not know and they did not know. And I still have to remember and I have to remind myself that the black church, because I can only speak to the black church.
Sure.
The black church is still very, very new. It's still in infancy stages, in my personal opinion
Mm.
because again of the recent access to education, knowledge, and information, the recent access to funds and resources and those types of things. So I can understand why people look at their pastor, as their therapist, as their father figure or now mother figure. I can understand all of those things because we are not a people in America who have had systems where we've had all of those things available to us. Church was a one-stop shop.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the
One-stop shop.
model. That was the model, right?
And a lot of us still look at church as a one-stop shop in 2025. But our counterparts, that ain't their story. That's not their testimony. That's why you can look at all these documentaries, you can read all these studies and everything, and you can see that the way that they approach faith is completely different to how we approach faith. It's completely
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. All right, listen, wait. All right. So we have to stop because this right here is cracking open. Bro, if you guys are watching this, you want to see a part two. I don't know what I'm gonna do with Eric J. Thomas. This I can curse at you. Uh, let me put a bow on that, and let me also add to, if I can, right? When you said the Black church is still very young, let me just add to that, please. And I'm not going to be long. There is some of that for me. What springs up is aging, but not maturing. Okay. So I believe that there's a lot of that, meaning tons of years, not a lot of evolution. I understand why that would be the case, though. When I was moving through seminary, one of the things that I was, one of the sort of lessons that I learned was that just because my awareness of divinity and theology was deepening, that didn't give me permission to take other people deeper who were just learning at the depth that they are. I'm trying to make
Mm.
that clear. And so they advised us, don't take this to the pulpit. Like, you know it, but you can't deliver it there. And I always, and it gave me the desire to protect people from theological spaces that will wreck their current view without their permission, right? That you would go so deep when there are, like, it's like it's like when you are when young people are in primary school, you have to understand where they are, and you have to gradually bring them to a space. And there are some people, just for shock value or for ego, who will bring something that they learned and probably haven't learned thoroughly enough to even package properly, but they'll just throw it at people. And I felt like that was so violent, because if a person has just figured out how to live more effectively with the understanding that they have, why would you throw them into chaos without their permission? Like, I feel like you can't do that because that's harmful again. And so I was like, I have all of this knowledge, but I can't bring it to the place where I'm delivering most often. But I say all of that to say that this real perplexing age, but slow maturity, slow, uh, paced maturity has, it adds to, we're really young. It's like, it gives me an opportunity to say, I agree with you. And then it gives me the critique of, so how patient should I be? Because there's a part of this where it's like, you are old enough, you understand, to, and I hate to say it, I'm just throwing thoughts, okay? I'm not trying to sound judgmental. But there are some opportunities for people who have aged to demand of themselves to move into maturity. Uh, and I'm not sure that we are, with our leaders, I'm not talking about the lay people, that we are challenging them enough, right? I think we might be leaving them vulnerable to some of the challenges that you have when you stop learning. Let me also say, bro, that whole learning, unlearn, relearn, if you don't put that on a shirt, bro, I will, I promise you, I will. And I will give it to you. I don't even make you pay for the shirt, but that thing got to go again. Um, I gotta stop. Um, Bro, I didn't get to any of my questions. None.
I'm sorry, man.
That's so evil. That's so wrong.
I'm
That's
sorry,
so
man.
diabolical, bro. But I am blessed for it. I mean all of those with the highest level of compliment, bro. So tell people where they can find you. Tell people where they can find your practice. And just a brief closing thought, please.
I'll just simply say to all of you who are watching and who are listening today, take the advice that was given to me. You've learned already. Allow yourself to unlearn and then to relearn. Allow yourself to be re-educated. Re-educated by a new mindset, a new system, and stop limiting your potential. I think one of the biggest things for me was I often limited my potential. I knew I had a lot of potential to do a lot of great things, but I limited my potential according to what I thought others may have wanted for me, wanted from me. I limited my potential according to how I can help other people live their best life and have their dreams come to pass. But at the end of the day, I had to change my mindset and realize that, God has given me an assignment that is also for me. And so I want to let any one of you who is listening, my brothers, and if I have some sisters watching, live your life for you. Allow your dreams to really come to pass. And don't be afraid to seek any kind of help. Out of everybody who's diagnosed with any type of help or mental illness in the Black community, studies will tell us that only 15% will ever receive and seek mental health help or assistance. Let's increase that number greater than the 15%. And again, you can follow me on all social media at Eric J. Thomas. You can go to www.ericjthomas.org. You can look me up on Psychology Today at Eric J. Thomas. And if I'm not in your state, we can still work something out. So that's all I got for you. And I'm so grateful for my friend and my brother, Dr. Dorsey, for having me on today. And I want all of you, again, to just go on your best journey to ultimately being your best self. What's standing between you and the person that you could be, that you should be, that you want to be. And think about whoever it is that you inspire, that you look up to, whoever it is that you look at and you say, wow, I would love to do that. What's stopping you from being that person or doing that or doing greater than? And just go from there. One step at a time, one day at a time, one yes at a time.
Listen to me. If you didn't get that, you're missing out. I am deeply impacted. Gratitude is off the charts. I feel more equipped, I feel seen, I feel heard. And I hope every person feels the same. And I hope that even more for the men who are watching. You have just experienced a next level conversation with Eric J. Thomas as a guest. I hope this was beneficial. If you want to see a part 2, let us know. Do me a favor. You know someone who needs to hear this, watch this, rewatch it, experience it, be blessed by it, and who needs to connect to the people who were involved in it. Do yourself a favor. It costs you nothing to tell somebody about this particular conversation. Hope you've enjoyed it. Do me a favor and subscribe and follow so that every time we go live, you'll get the notice. Man, drop some comments. How did this impact you? God, this was good. It was good to me. I hope it was good to you. We'll talk to you soon. And if you're climbing, meet me at the top. All right, family, that's a wrap for this session of Next Level Conversations. But remember, elevation does not stop here. Apply what you've learned, challenge yourself, and keep pushing towards your next level. If this conversation resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, subscribe, stay locked in for the next one. Keep moving, keep growing. And if you're climbing, I'll see you at the top.